And honestly, I think this way of thinking also explains some of the discourse on tabletop RPGs.
I agree.
There are games that are good, but there are games that can be entertaining. And most of the time, people don't really think about a game being good design-wise. It just needs to be entertaining.
There's a lot of reasons that I count myself as lucky for hosting this show. And I think one of the biggest things that I love is the people that I've got a chance to meet. Edoardo is definitely not the biggest name I've had on this show, but I think you're going to find this to be a very interesting interview. Now, I've read and played dozens, if not hundreds of systems. I've rarely come across something as unique as Edoardo's feel system. Yes, this is another Hide Your Wallet episode. Edoardo helped me continue my quest to talk to creators from across the globe. How the approach to our hobby has regional differences just blows my mind. We have a great discussion about running mysteries in your games. I bet you're going to be surprised to hear what he's been grooving on. All right, sit back, relax, and enjoy my time with Edoardo.
My name is Anthony Boyd, but you might know me better as Runeslinger. When I'm not working on my own sporadic RPG, podcasting, and video projects, I listen to Tabletop Talk for its far more regular, deep dives into the brains of top designers in the role-playing game and wargaming spaces. I enjoy it a lot, and I think you will too.
Howdy friends, Craig here. Today I'm talking with Edoardo Buzzi, creator of the Feel system for tabletop role-playing games. This unique system allows you to build your character as you play, with influences across the design community. It took a 15-minute conversation with him for me to know we needed to learn more and get him on the show. So Edoardo, welcome to the third floor.
Thank you so much. I'm genuinely excited to be here, so thanks for having me.
I feel like we've known each other for like a really long time. We have been communicating via, I think, Twitter mostly for a year or two now, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a real pleasure to finally have a chat, let's say.
So Edoardo had reached out to me and, he said, hey, Craig, I've got this Feel system and I wonder if you'd take a look at it. And I started reading through it and I'm like, this is really interesting. And then we had, I think, a relatively quick phone call. And I heard you start talking about it. I'm like, all right, stop. And we booked time for the show. But as a listener, you know what's coming next. So a long time ago, Edoardo, you knew nothing about tabletop role-playing game. And then at some point, someone put it in front of you for the first time. Can we go back there?
Absolutely. So let's say this is a two-part story, if you want. So the very first time I heard about tabletop RPGs, it was in, I think, 2001. I was 12 years old. And basically, I just moved to a different town from Venice in the north of Italy to the place I live now. And there was this schoolmate who approached me at the end of school, at the end of the lesson. And he was like, look, there is this thing I do with friends. We meet at someone's place and, it's weird. Actually, we are vampires. I mean, we are all vampires and, we fight werewolves and we compete for power and it's weird. It's actually easy if you show up and see for yourself what this is about. And of course, I was a newcomer. So obviously that didn't creep me out at all. And I'm all in. And so they were playing, obviously, Vampire the Masquerade. And yeah, that was my first time. I went there and they asked me to just, not to play, just to look at what they were doing. And I actually met basically all my closest friends this way.
Isn't that funny?
We are all still in touch and some of us still play. And basically, I remember how I annoyed one of the GM actually, because basically I basically solved riddles, from the public, and he was like, no, you can do that. You're not playing. You can give solutions, and yeah, that was my very first time with a tabletop role playing game.
So not your typical fantasy start, right? So something different. Can you remember? You're sitting there observing people play. Do you have a sense, or do you remember how that unfolded in your head, like at the different levels that you understood what was happening?
So I for sure didn't realize what the rules were doing. Also because our play style was very, if you want, freeform. We didn't follow all the rules, And but I remember that the process itself felt very natural to me. I was one of those child who played with, action figures and create the longest stories. I always played with the Legos.
Nice.
But the fun part for me was not to build, was to create stories set in the castle I just built. So building was necessary to create stories, So basically it felt a little bit different because, of course, there were other people and no toys, just dice.
Right.
But let's say I remember that I was like, wow, this is cool. Now, I read a lot at the time. I still do. And I was like, this is fun. This seems great. These people seem great. These are all, if you want, like-minded like me, if you want, because they were able to create their imagination to create stories and stuff. And I was like, yeah, this is my place. This is what I want to be. So yeah.
You're playing Vampire the Masquerade. What is the next game that comes on your radar? The next game that got your interest?
So basically, the one point we faced at the time was the fact that none of us knew English as good as needed, So
Right.
our choices were not a lot, and we had this small bookstore here, and basically Vampire was the only thing there. And the group actually landed on Vampire because they were playing D&D First Edition with another group of people. But they didn't like the whole dungeoneering thing, if you want. They wanted something different. So when they found Vampire, they said, "Oh, cool! This seems cool." A few of them were big fans of the movie with the vampires with Brad Pitt. The title is eluding me. Anyway,
Are you talking about Interview with a Vampire?
Yes, that one.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So. And then a few years later, I think, Underworld came out. So vampires were a thing, and that felt cool. And the next, we played a lot of that. We basically, we did what most people do with D&D, We played fantasy with vampire and sci-fi with vampire and everything.
Okay.
And then after a few years, actually, I think, we decided to give it a try to D&D 3.5. And the group really liked it, but
Nice.
I didn't. I wasn't able to appreciate that. Basically,
Why?
too much tables and the D20. There were I wasn't ready, let's say, to move to something different. And later, I met another group of people older than me, and one of them was a huge fan of Fate Core, and he told me, "Look, this system is great." He played Dresden Files, the first version. And yeah, so I landed on Fate. And that was, I would say, my second big game I played a lot. And actually, I played a lot more in the end than Vampire, probably. And toyed with it a lot more. Let's say it was my first workshop to hack stuff and create my own things, if you want.
Was it hard for you to let go of the structure of Vampire, or was it a situation when you got Fate, you immediately understood it, or was there a transition for you?
So there was a transition, definitely. I wouldn't talk about structure probably, but I was used to this attribute plus skill thing, and moving to skills straight in Fate was weird. And obviously aspects were a huge thing,
right.
But we loved that. Also because in a way it solved a lot of the problems we faced with vampires. Sometimes you're like, yeah, but I was a cop. Why I'm not good at this as I should be? And when we found aspects, we were like, wow, this is exactly what we felt it was missing in another game. So no, it wasn't so hard, let's say. No, not so hard.
So, as we were going to talk about the field system, I'm sure we're going to also talk about a lot of the influences that you had along with it. But not as a designer, but as a player, what systems are you playing now that you're really enjoying?
So I'll be honest. In this very moment, I'm playing D&D 5e.
Okay, and what are you enjoying about 5e?
The setting mostly. I'm
Yeah.
a huge fan of Eberron. Yes. And basically, I didn't want to try to translate it in any other game, so I decided to go with 5e. But we are also playing the Sprawl at the moment. That's a great game in my opinion. And the previous game we just ended was, I think, Monster of the Week.
Nice.
But yeah, we play a lot of games. I have an Excel spreadsheet that is long, and yeah. So these are the games. I'm reading also now Torchbearer 2nd edition.
Oh, can you believe it? I do not own Torchbearer and I've never read it. What's your take on it so far?
I was thinking about you while reading it, actually, because I think the game is very suited to the way you GM Forbidden Lands.
How so?
It's similar in the role the GM needs to have, in the way that the book suggests to prep, and in the way it's structured to create adventures and adventure sites.
Got it.
I saw a lot. Let's say in the past 6 months, we tried Forbidden Lands, Fellowship 2nd edition, and I'm reading Words Without Numbers, and now this one, and I saw a lot of similarities. It's clear. I mean, it seems clear to me that they are all different takes, but looking at the same thing. So it was interesting.
You sold Torchbearer. I'm gonna have to finally break and buy it because that's something that I just really gravitated to in Forbidden Lands, and really the other like, it's almost a design philosophy we're seeing coming out of Free League, which is something that took me a little while to grok as a GM, which is stop writing stories. Just create situations. Yep.
Yes.
Or as John Harper says, create dangers and threats and
yes.
have an awareness of where of the world, and then drop the players in and then just see what happens and react. And so many times, I'll pick up and read some of the those incredible series of adventures, that for Pathfinder, I always forget what they call them, but
Adventure Paths.
Adventure Paths. I mean, they're amazing, but I couldn't run one now because they have specific beats that you have to hit along the way in order for it to all work. I need something different now. So, God damn it, I'm going to end up buying Torchbearer because of you. I hope you're proud of yourself.
So no, I am actually, and and anyway, this is a train of thought I was myself thinking about recently, because I think that one of the major things that happened to me as a player, while let's say I read more games, was moving from the idea of preparation as I need to know exactly whatever is going to happen, whatever takes the story might take, I need to know, and then it became something like, no, I want to be zero prep. Just improvisation, and then and then something clicked in my mind, and I am now in a place where I know that I need to prep, but it's a different way of prepping. As you said, it's not about creating a sequence of scenes or outcomes, but rather a series of dangers, threats, situations, opportunities, and use the NPCs you have in the game to basically feed the conflict inside the game. And so let's say I faced the similar evolution, if you want, when it came to prepping my own games.
And when you're used to running a game a specific way, sometimes it's hard to let go. Very, very hard to let go. And the most recent version of that for me is running Vaesen, right, out of Free League. And, it's a mystery. It's a mystery, and it's even really in many ways even more investigative than like Call of Cthulhu, because you're not trying to figure out how to beat the monster. You're figuring out how to satisfy the threat, right? To make the threat go away. So you really have to uncover a lot more than you do in Call of Cthulhu. And I found me prepping for it like it's Brindlewood Bay, right? And instead of, so the concept of just having a list of clues, like here's everything that's going on, here's all of the intricate things, and here's 15 clues that they can find. Now, the clues are a lot more defined for this than they are in Brindlewood Bay, but that idea that like I can drop these clues anywhere, but I don't have to have them go down to the bathroom on the third floor in order to find, this specific clue. And if they don't find this clue, then they're not going to find it. I've got 20 clues for my players to find. And if they find 8 of them, they're going to figure stuff out. So yeah, it's neat, but it's hard to let go of stuff, especially when you're super used to it.
Absolutely. And to be honest, investigative mystery games are, for me, something that we could discuss for hours because they are a very specific kind of game, especially for this media, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think they basically face the same issue, if you want, that conversations have, because it's one of the few things that we can actually do at the table, figuring out stuff. So it's very easy to, at some point, forget about the game and just solve riddles or mysteries with our own, capabilities, if you want, and abilities.
It's a hard genre to run, right? Because there's a lot of things in there. It's very easy to get stalled. And you have to be very adept as a GM to prevent that from happening without removing agency. That's not easy. The other part, which you're hinting at too, Edoardo, is the who's investigating. Is the player investigating or is the character investigating, right? And if it's the character investigating, how are we going to make that so? If I've got a character who has a ton of folklore knowledge, more than the player does, then how do we make that work? And I think the better systems support that and help you in their mechanics to solve that so that your player still feels like they're playing an expert in folklore, right? That they're not just rolling a die and they got a 20. So now I'm going to give you this information. It's a tough balance, a real tough balance. So guys, the Insider Insight series allows me to sit down with designers, developers, artists, writers, and creators and learn how they approach their work. I try to understand their process, inspiration, and methods for crafting their creations. We're going to do that with Edoardo. We're going to talk about the feel system on the other side of the break.
Hey, it's me. I'm interrupting this episode, and I hope you're enjoying it, and I bet you're anxious to hear the rest. But before we jump back, I need a favor. Do you know someone who might enjoy this episode? Can you shoot them a quick message or maybe even send them a link to it? Listeners sharing this podcast was the primary reason we almost doubled our audience last year. Also, would you like to see and hear these games in action? Go to the Third Floor Wars YouTube channel and Twitch stream. Our actual plays combine compelling role-playing, character-driven action, and system tutorials. We create great stories while lifting the hood and showcasing the game mechanics. Links to both are in the show notes. Okay, last thing, and I mean it. Have you rated this podcast on your pod platform yet? Maybe even written a short review? It is a simple way for you to be even more awesome than you already are. Okay, now I'm done. Let's jump back and listen to the rest of this episode.
Like I mentioned, when Edoardo first kind of sent over the feel system, I started reading through it and I'm like, I need to talk to him. And then we hopped on the phone and he started walking me through this thing. I want all of you to get ready because this is going to be both familiar and foreign all at the same time. So Edoardo, let's start just with an overview. So what is the 2 or 3 sentences that you use to kind of explain to people or to prepare people for understanding what the feel system is?
Oh, all right. So usually I say something like feel system is a, let's say, setting free tabletop role-playing game that is focused on finding out who the main characters are and why. It's about telling stories where we play to find out why the protagonists are the true center of the story. And the rules of the game will support us in doing this.
And that discovery piece, I think, is what really makes it unique. And we're going to get very much into the mechanics. But before we do, and before we talk about kind of the history of how you got here, I do want to give the listeners a little bit of a sense of where do they start. So if I sit down and I'm going to play a field system game, if I'm going to be playing to discover my character, I've got to start somewhere. So let's talk about where they start.
So let's say the something I find out at some point during the design was that a setup phase was needed to play field system proficiently. And this was at least hard to find out because I play tested it with my friends. So we were all on the same page constantly. But at some point during playtest, I had the chance to look at someone else's game, and I was like, okay, I need to create tools for the group to get on the same page, understand what are they going to play and why and what to expect from the game.
What was the game that made you rethink that?
I don't remember. I think it was Henry's group, maybe. But I honestly don't remember. We had a lot of playtests, and probably in several occasions that happened. I think probably one of the most important playtests was done by a friend of mine, and it was a superhero kind of game. And as you probably know, superhero genre is very open. Mm-hmm. So basically, there were people playing Justice League and others playing Avengers, and another one was playing basically on his own. Another game, a very grittier and darker one, basically. And so yeah, that was let's say revealing as a playtest. And so
what was your reaction to that then? So you said I definitely need more of a setup to help people get on the same page. Yes. So what does that look like?
So basically, it's list of questions, and you have some open questions for the group to answer. Others you can pick from a list to basically use commonly known label, let's say like superhero, fantasy, and stuff. And basically there is these list of points to touch. And at the end of the game, let's say the group should have a clear picture of what to expect and what is there to be explored, basically.
So at that point, we've established, genre, setting, the type of game that we're going to play. But I still don't have a character yet.
No, you don't.
So where do I start on this journey to create the character in play? But before we start at all, though, I've got to start somewhere. I've got a blank sheet of paper in front of me.
Yeah, you have your character sheet, and basically the game asks you just to pick a name for your character, pronouns, look, and let's say a concept, what is called a concept, which is during the first session, it's something that will change during the game. But basically at the beginning of the first session, your concept is mostly your demeanor and look, how you appear, basically. And then you just pick 3, they were called attributes in the first iteration, but now they're called attitudes. So basically, they are just physical, intellectual, and social aptitudes, which are a broad way to say, I want to be good at this. It's also a mechanical bit because it basically affects the number of dice you roll. But first and foremost, it's a declaration of intent. I want to be this kind of character. You don't know me yet, but expect me to be involved in these kind of situations.
And we're gonna talk a little bit more about it, but that's where you hooked me, right? Which is, it seems like that's the most fun part of character creation is just coming up with the basic concepts and those things, and having the freedom when playing the field system to define as we go and to really discover as we go is very interesting. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. I want to go back in history. At some point, you got the first kernel of this idea. And as I talk to designers, I'm finding kind of 2 things. One is writing a game because an idea just pops in your head and you can't get rid of it. The other thing I'm hearing is I'm trying to solve a problem. So what was it for the field system? When you go back in time and think about the first time you started thinking about this, what caused that to happen?
So I remember that moment very well. I was commuting back home from work, And I am lucky enough to have, let's say, my better half, who is also a player and a eager one, let's say. And at the time, basically, we were trying to play a lot one-on-one. And we usually had a few hours, not long sessions. So it was something to basically to do when it was possible. And we use Fate Core mostly for this kind of stuff. But the problem was that usually figuring out the list of skills and create characters took longer than we had available. It didn't make sense to spend 1 hour making one character or creating all the thing if then you had just 2 to play. So I remember that I was in my car and I called her and I said, look, I just had an idea. What if we started with a blank piece of paper in front of us? You decide your name, we decide what kind of game you want to play, and I just GM it for you. And she was like, okay, cool. You realize it's not a game. And I was like, right, let me think about it. And this was actually, I think, 2016.
Wow, so it's been a while.
It was a long process, but it started for real in 2018. And let's say this is the second part of the story I was mentioning before. My real introduction, let's say, to tabletop RPGs as I see them now was in 2018. And precisely during our honeymoon, to be honest. We were lucky enough, she basically got sick. She had fever, temperature, and at some point she couldn't speak anymore. So it was like, and obviously she was like, please, at least you try to enjoy the trip. And I was like, I mean, yeah, okay, for a couple of hours a day, but then I want to stay with you and see how you're feeling. And so I basically stumbled on this game, which had this cover, this dark cover with this white title and this guy hooded with a couple of blades in hand, and basically that was my, real, I felt reborn after reading Blades in the Dark. So the process started a few months later. We moved to UK and I started thinking about field system in a different way. And basically that was the real beginning of the design as I do it now, let's say. But the idea started in 2016.
So what did you find so earth-shattering in Blades? So as you're flipping through Blades, do you remember like different points or different things that you came across that kind of blew your mind?
Basically everything. I mean, at first it was just a matter of, wow, using these sixes in this way, that's cool, because I wasn't so used to roll and keep. And then everything, every single page. And the real thing that made me realize Blades was something different was the fact that I wasn't able to play it. It took me like 4 years to proficiently play Blades with my group because of what you said earlier. It's tough to let go, and Blades was really different. And after we played the first game, and I was like, this feels so different from what is written in the book, I stopped and I said, okay, I need to learn stuff. It's clear that this is not working. It's clear that this would work if I did something different. So I want to crack it. I want to understand what I'm doing differently.
There is an instinct, and I struggled with this too, man, where you're fighting the game. And it's because you can't let go, right? And when you're fighting with the game, Blades can feel tough. It can feel crunchy in a lot of ways if you keep fighting it. Yeah, I'm the same way. It took me, at least a year of running it a lot before I finally just like gave up in a good way and just let go, and I'm like, all right, so instead of me trying to dictate how to run Blades, I'm going to do something really revolutionary and run it the way it's written. God forbid, right? I'm actually in the way that John in the back of the book says, like, hey guys, this is how you run the game.
That's so true. And then you find out and you say, wow, I did this really smart thing which is perfect for the game. And then you go to page 100 and you find that exactly written written down and you're like, okay, I'm a moron.
That's so funny. So funny. All right. So Blades blows your mind. Obviously your wife gets feeling better. You get done with your honeymoon, you head home. Where does that then, so you go back and pull out the field system again and start looking at it. Where do I see the Blades fingerprints? Where do I see Blades change things for you?
For example, you can see that in the roll and keep mechanic of the aptitudes, but also in the whole negotiation process. So it's different than Blades. To be honest, it's worse than Blades, but it's tough to be better than Blades at something,
sure,
you know,
sure.
At least for me. And basically players can revisit their intent to lower the difficulty or accept, let's say, different consequences. So the whole negotiation process is explained, let's say, worse than Blades. Yep. It's less effective, but, you know, I couldn't just copy paste what John's typed down in his book. And, but yeah, it's there.
So to help the audience, let's do this. I've got my character sheet. We've decided that I'm going to play an Indiana Jones pulp hero and 1920s, and I'm in a tomb, and I need to jump across this pit. Now on my character sheet, we just have my concept, my ideas, what I look like. I've put down a focus, right? What type of character I'm going to be, but I haven't put anything else down. So I say to you as the GM playing field system, okay, I want to jump this pit. What happens now?
So in this case, basically intent is pretty clear, and also approach. So let's say these two steps can more or less be skipped if you want. And so I'm telling you, okay, this is a physical situation. So grab your physical aptitudes. And I would say something like, based on what happened, based on what we established about the pit, about you being injured, for example, or you being on the run, or you being very athletic, I don't know, stuff like that. We decide that the TN is, 15. And at that point, what happens is that you get to reveal one tag for your character. So I would say something like, do you possess any useful tag that apply to this role, your decision, or do you want to reveal something to help you facing this challenge?
And I say to you, I'm a former decathlete, right? I competed in decathlons in high school and college. So, my tag is decathlete.
So I'd ask you what kind of tag is it? If it's a good tag, a legendary tag, a superior tag, you write it down. And at that point, I would ask you, do you want to narrate a flashback about your character, about a meaningful moment of your past, somehow related to this tag?
And so I do that, right? I come up with a really great flashback that really kind of parallels this. And we come back from that flashback. What happens?
What happens is basically that we establish the consequences of your failure. And for example, you could say, okay, I accept that. Or you could say, wait, could we face worse consequences to lower the TN? Or on the other side, look, I don't care if I actually jump. I just want to place the tome on the other side of the pit for my friends to grab it. So maybe this lowered the TN, but the consequences now are you fall down badly. For example, You grab your dice, you now apply your tag bonus, you roll your dice, and we play to find out what happens, basically.
And what I find that's neat about that is it takes the flashback concept and makes it part of character creation, and it does it in the moment. So there's a spirit of Blades in there that I find very interesting. What are the limits though? So, that we go through that. Now I've got a new tag. We've been playing for several sessions. Maybe I've got 10 or 15 tags. Is there any type of mechanical control system to prevent me from just ending up with a 50 tag character and they're all superior tags? How does the system handle that?
So basically, at the beginning of the game, you start with a specific number of tags, namely 3 good tags, 2 superior tags, and 1 legendary tag. And there is also a maximum tag, because tags are basically grouped in 3 sections. You need to reveal all the tags in the first section to unlock the ones in the second one. But that's not the only, let's say, control mechanism. So basically, in field system, there are no experience points. Instead, to basically get to reveal more of your character, you basically need to push yourself to grab an extra die to overcome challenges. And when you do so, your potential increases by 1. And when your potential reaches certain levels, and you already spent all the tags in the previous section, you get to unlock the new ones. But every time you push, you also award the GM a plot point, which is basically a game resource the GM can use to make your life harder, but also more interesting. And let's say these all things. So I want to reveal more stuff about my character. To do so, I need to push. To push, I need to roll. So I want to roll. I look for conflicts and challenges and situations and obstacles to face. But in doing that, I'll also give the GM an ammo they can use against me later. Against me, I mean, in the spirit of collaboratively create a story, of course.
Yeah, and I found it interesting when I kind of began to grok that, because what you're doing is you are tying together character progression with a meta currency, which I thought was neat. And I also really love the fact that it encourages engagement. It encourages the players to push their characters, literally push their characters, and be proactive in that process in order to do that unlocking. So let's talk about the playtest process. So now it's post Blades. You've made some major changes conceptually. It's somewhat baked. First, let's talk about playtests that you ran. What are some things that you gleaned from those early playtests that you ran that I can now see in the game?
So let's say the first real playtest already had both these meta currency for the GM and the fact that you reveal tags. I remember the very first game, my players reacted to it very weirdly, because they were like, we can really do anything we want. Like, we have a blank piece of paper, and we ended up playing some ninja cats in a post-apocalyptic world facing, I think, dogs or dragons or something. But I remember that at some point, let's say I can be a very hardcore GM sometimes. So I basically threw them in a situation that looked impossible to face. And one of the players said, okay, stop. I want to reveal something. I know a ninja technique to become invisible. And this is a +4 tag. And look, I am able to make all of us invisible. And while at the time, let's say it felt probably weird and it was not ideal as it was, I remember as a GM feeling really amazed by how this player managed to solve the problem and surprise me. And it didn't feel unfair to me, like, okay, but I want to, just overcome this obstacle in a very simple way, because he spent his best resource to do so. It felt great. And I remember that was a defining moment where I said, there is something cool here. I need to do more, because this can be something.
What was some of the final things you figured out before you started saying, like, this is what I'm doing, and you're still working on it, you're still tweaking it and things like that. But when did it finally feel baked for you? When did it finally feel like, yeah, I think that I've got this now? So
this is a painful memory for me, but also a good one. So yeah, hand me a tissue. But basically, imagine that at some point during 2019, the book was done. I had 200 pages written and laid out with, some pictures from other game just to, just as placeholders. And I opened a Discord server, and a lot of people from Twitter decided to join. And among them, two of my now closest friends in the tabletop RPG world, let's say, Greg Lauer, which was here
Greg's been on the show,
and Matthew Simail, which is Vanish on Twitter. And basically at the time, our relationship wasn't that good, in my opinion. Let's say we were always arguing in a way.
Greg likes to argue.
Yeah. I mean, but I felt I wanted them to see my game, because I thought these guys can really challenge me to do better. And basically, at some point, I think Matthew mostly was saying, "Look, okay, this is interesting. No, I won't deny it, but you could do so much more. What kind of stories do you want to create?" And I was like, I want people to discover about their characters, to connect to the setting we already baked together, to add on top of it. And he was like, okay, so do that with the rules. And I was like, you can't create rules to do that. And he was like, oh yeah, you can. You just need to find a way, but I assure you, you can. And he was right. And basically, the last bit is what is now in the game as a story path, which is, to be honest, the best part of the game, in my opinion.
Interesting.
And it came way later. And I remember myself thinking, oh yeah, really? Okay, now I'm creating those rules. I'll show you. And he was doing me a favor, you know? And at the end, I was like, man, I have to thank you, because you pushed me in the right direction. And that was the last bit that was missing to the game to become what it is now. Let's say.
So let's talk about what the story path is. So what was that breakthrough?
So basically, the idea was to incorporate in the rules a way for players to have a goal in the discovery process of their characters. Up to that point, it was good, but depending on the player, it could felt a little bit random. I have this, I have that. So basically, story path can be opened by players after a flashback. And they are basically a big question we want the answer to. And when the player creates these, they can decide who is going to answer.
Interesting.
If it's going to be the GM or themselves. And basically, you have this additional part of the character sheet, which is separate from it. You write it down. You write this question down. You write down who is going to answer. What is the focus of the question? So, for example, let's say, I think this is also an example in the book, but basically, let's say your grandfather gave you a magical watch. The last day you saw them, basically, they disappeared after. So this is the flashback. And you decided to come up with it when you revealed your time-stopping magical watch, for example. Yeah. At that point, you can create a lot of questions. So, for example, what's the real nature of the watch? Or who built it? Or what happened to my grandfather? Or why did they give it to me? And basically, there is a list of type of questions you can pick from to help the player basically focusing what they want to answer to, and also help everyone else to understand where they shouldn't go with their own creative force, let's say. And this is also called the Rodent Gate system. It's a way to help players, let's say, not overstepping on each other's toes, if you want, especially with the GM. And the final bit of it was that I decided to help. So basically, imagine you create this flashback, you create this question, and you have no idea at all about the answer. You decided to be the one to answer it, but you have no idea at that point in time. And these are actually the best questions to be answered, right? So I was thinking, okay, maybe some players will do it easily, but others won't.
Yeah.
And so I decided to introduce these spectators questions, which are basically questions asked by the rest of the group to each player about the story path, which is basically, which I picture them as dots to be connected to end up answering the final question. And that was, let's say, another useful bit that has been added in the game. And this is the story path, more or less, let's say.
Well, and it's mechanizing what really happens in almost every game, right? Where we start to find these little mini quests, these little ideas, these concepts that may or may not have been baked into a backstory in a traditional game, and in some ways can take over. And I think mechanizing it that way is definitely very interesting. So guys, we're going to take another break. When we get back from this break, we're going to talk about two more specific games. We're going to talk about Monsters and Oppressors and Pirates of the Stone Seas. We'll be right back.
Attention all floorheads, gather round. I have a quest for you. You can simultaneously show your love for the show and embark on rewarding adventures. Head over to drivethrurpg.com, your one-stop shop for all things gaming. Whether you're looking for rulebooks, maps, art, or epic tales to enhance your gaming experience, it is that one-stop shop. Now, in the show notes, there's a unique affiliate link. Every one of your purchases directly supports Tabletop Talk if you use that link. It's like casting a powerful spell that helps us keep the podcast going strong. So next time you're itching for a new adventure, follow the affiliate link in our show notes or bookmark it now in your browser. It can be your portal to everything on DriveThruRPG. Now let's get back to the show, but please support the show by using that DriveThruRPG affiliate link next time you are shopping at the site.
So now that we have kind of an understanding of the feel system from a conceptual standpoint and really from a design goal standpoint, I want to talk about Monsters and Oppressors. So Monsters and Oppressors does not exist. And then you decide, I'm going to start working on this. So let's go back there to the very beginnings of Monsters and Oppressors.
So this was, let's say, more recent. It was, I think, 2020. And I was working, as always. And basically, I was taking a break. And I was thinking of a dice mechanic. Basically, I was thinking about rolling. And rather than adding the dice to decide the result, I was trying to give more agency by allowing players to place dice on different tables to decide what was happening. And basically, that felt good. I created on a piece of paper I had in front of me a very basic table. I show it to my better half, and she said, "Yeah, that seems interesting." And I said, "Yeah, right. But this time I want this to be specific. I don't want to do the same I did for feel.
Right.
I want this to be grounded in a very specific setting this time." Basically, so. Field system was mostly done as you said with basically all of your guests. Designing, let's say, is simple. Writing a tabletop RPG is a whole different thing. And I was basically in that final plateau where I felt that designing was done and I didn't find energies to write. So I took the easy way and I decided to design something different, right? And basically I wanted to do things differently. I wanted to do something very different. It was awesome how different it felt, all the design process, how easier it felt to start from the fiction rather than from a more, let's say, abstract idea of what should happen in a fiction. And I think in a few weeks, possibly, the core of the game was done.
Wow.
And the purpose there was to do basically everything differently. So we had a setting, and basically the game was way more structured than feel. I wanted it to be so. Something Blades showed me at the time was how a game can benefit from having a specific structure if you want. And then Agon 2nd edition came out, and that game was awesome to me. And I said, I want to do something structured as Agon is.
Yeah.
Plus, I played Zombie World, which is another
great game.
Great game. It's stunning. And I said, I want to do something closer to these games. And then Monsters and Oppressors came, basically. That's the point. That what happened.
Let's talk about that structure real quick. So when we say, because Blades is very structured. Obviously, Agon is very, very structured, and so is Zombie World, right? There's very specific, like, now we're doing this, now we're going to do that, and when you're doing those things, you have an incredible amount of freedom, agency, and flexibility. But it is very particular. I mean, Blades has 2 phases, right? Well, 3 phases if you count the GM turn. And it's very specific. So what is the specific structure that we see in Monsters and Oppressors?
So basically, to answer the question, I just need to briefly explain what the game is about. So basically, it's about a bunch of rebels fighting an alien oppression that is basically plaguing our world. And every player get to control their character, which is the unit leader, but there's more. Every player is also controlling a whole unit of characters. So his PC and several NPCs. And there is a loyalty mechanism to basically see how the unit is getting along. And basically the game is played in missions. I found that this is somehow very similar to Band of Blades, but at the time I didn't know about Band of Blades.
Right.
So it's some sort of retrospective influence, if you want.
Yep.
And so basically, in the structure is you have a lot of phases, actually. So the first one is the briefing. So you get the characters together, the leaders together, and they decide what to do. They can ask the GM for a mission, or they can look at the map. You have a setup, obviously, even in this game. And because I'm a huge fan of setups, you will find a setup in mostly every game of mine. And then you basically pick a point on the map and you decide to do something. You also have this region you play in characterized by several stats. So you can even work to increase one of those stats to make it more safe or more wealthy or more, more keen to the rebellion. And then you basically I have this cooperation phase. So basically you decide who is leading the mission. So you have this commander, which is the player. The player will tell the others what to do, and they will decide if they want to follow the orders or if they want to do something different, and this will affect the game. And then you start the mission, which is, let's say, as in Blade, the score, if you want.
Right.
And then you play it out. You see if you fail or succeed. There is, let's say, a mechanic which is called the alert. If the alert goes up, you're done, because the oppression is unbeatable if they display full force. And if you made it, you get rewarded, and you get to basically run through some sort of downtime, and then the GM does something, and then you repeat.
That's cool. That's cool. And what's cool about it is I hear all of those things you talked about. I hear Argon in there. I hear Zombie World in there. I hear Blades in there. That's exciting. What was the big moment in the design process with this, that breakthrough moment? So you're struggling with it, you're fighting it, it's fighting back, and it's something's not working. And you either added something to Monsters or took something away from Monsters that finally made it all start to click. Do you remember that?
So to be honest, I have a very good memory of designing Monsters and Oppressors, because after a game that took me several years, it felt very easy to design Monsters and Oppressors. I should look at my log to answer the question, but I think that one big moment was when I took a lot of mechanics and I basically collapsed them. Some of them were removed, some of them were simplified to be the same. There were too many resources in the first iteration, and they felt a little bit overwhelming and to the players. And when I finally removed them and made them, let's say, easier to understand, that felt great.
When does Pirates come into play? So that's after Monsters, right? So Monsters, you put that together first. When does Pirates start to get on your radar?
I think actually a few months ago. And again, to me, let's say after Phil, every other game was made because of the urge to explore something different in the design. So I decided to go somewhere in between. I wanted the same flexibility of field system, but a little bit more structured. And I wanted to be smaller than both of them, because in the end, both of them were, I don't want to say big books, but they, let's say, closer to masks. So maybe not the biggest book on the market, but not so thin as well. I wanted something smaller, something easier, even for me to manage, because my design activity started with COVID-19. I had a lot of free time.
Right.
That free time is not mine anymore. Yeah. So I need that to be, some easier and more manageable. And most importantly, I wanted a pirate game. So Sean Tompkins didn't unlock the Thunderdile supplement yet. Another friend of mine is designing something, but is taking his sweet time. And I needed something to play basically Black Sails. So I was like, look, I tried 7C. It's a great game, but I don't want fantasy in my pirate game. So I'm going to design it. And basically I did.
So it's, you start with the genre, you start with the feel, you start with limits, right? That this is not going to be, fantasy pirates. This is going to be more pirates.
Yes.
What's next? Now that you've got that concept, you've got an idea. I want it to be more mechanical and structured than feel, but not quite as structured as Monsters. What's the first step from a mechanic standpoint? Where do you start to find that sweet spot?
So actually the mechanics started with another game I played in the meantime, which is Undying by Paul Riddle, which is hilariously great. It's an incredible game.
Yeah, I got to get Paul on the show.
it's an incredible game. And I wanted that in my own design. So I started with tokens. I wanted to be honest, actually, this started with a chat with my wife, because I remember me saying something like, a tabletop RPGs should enforce the behaviors we want from players at the table. What do we want? We want them to do stuff. We want them sometimes to fail. What do we want the GM to do? We want them to provide opportunities. We want them to place obstacles. And I said, the point is, we want them to do these things in a specific balance, let's say. We don't want just opportunities and no obstacles. We don't want just successes and no failures. And so I started with this idea, and this is where Undying comes in. What if we use tokens to basically spread these things to ensure all of them happen in the proper ratio, if you want? And that was the beginning, let's say.
So where is the field system, Monsters and Oppressors, and Pirates right now? At what stage are each of them right now?
So basically, field system is done. It just need edits. I have art. I also have a video for a Kickstarter. I just need to find the courage to launch the campaign, if you want. I was trying, if you want, to release it through some publishers, but let's say it didn't find the interest of these publishers. So for sure, Phil will see the light of the day, and I'm pretty sure it will be through some kind of crowdfunding campaign. Monsters is written at 90%. I'm just missing some sections with the setting mostly, so some flavor, let's say. And Pirates is probably the most the one that is actually finished, layout and everything, because it's going to be released as an Ashcan only, no art. I did the cover myself. It's already laid out, so let's say it's ready to be released. I'm just working on a final bit of the design that I decided to add. And basically, I think that both Monsters and Pirates will be on each.
Gotcha.
I'm not sure if they'll be pay what you want or for a small amount of money. I'm not sure. I just want them to be available to people, So
So is there any way right now, people listening, before that we get these out there in Ashcan, before we start the Kickstarter, is there a way for us to get a peek at it, or is it not ready for public consumption?
I'd say it's ready. I could release it 100%. The point is that I'm now a bit, distracted by other things in life.
Well, you're moving to a phase that has nothing to do with design, right? It has nothing to do with gameplay. It has nothing to do with game design. It doesn't have to do with writing or anything. It's a whole nother phase and another skill set that I think a lot of designers don't realize is coming, and they get there and they're like, oh crap, like, yeah, I just designed the shit out of this game, but now I've got to be marketing. Now I've got to, business plans and all of that stuff. And writing games tends to be a little bit more fun than this phase.
Absolutely. And this is my experience as well. Basically, I realized that a game needs to become a book, and the book needs to become a product.
Yeah.
To be on the market, Mm-hmm. And as you said, I feel I have the skills to design a game. I managed somehow to write a book. I am still struggling with the marketing phase and everything. And I think this is what is holding me a little bit down at the moment.
Yeah.
But to be honest, if someone wants just to play the game, I have no problems sharing what I have right now as it is. And it's all of them are fully playable games. So if anyone is interested, I'm here. I mean, I'm on Twitter. You can message me.
And we'll have a link to your Twitter account as people scroll down. So, guys, we're going to take one more break. And when we get on the other side of the break, we're going to get to one of my favorite segments in the show, which is, what are you grooving on? We'll be right back. This is the part of many podcasts where someone comes on, interrupts the show, and explains that you should consider paying for the content that you're listening to right now for free. That pitchman explains by giving $1 or more a month, you not only support the show, but you allow the show to grow and improve. Here on the third floor, we refuse to interrupt your episode of Tabletop Talk with such time-wasting pleas. We pledge never to run a spot asking you to go to patreon.com and give $1 or more a month, because supporting content creators keeps the content coming. Even if there is a link in the show's description, and there is, we don't ask you to click it and become a patron. We don't waste time rambling about the benefits like early access to episodes, getting episodes without ad breaks like this, or even getting a chance to play in one of Craig's RPG sessions. Anyway, enjoy this episode knowing Tabletop Talk, despite being supported by its patrons, won't engage in such blatant appeals for support. So Edoardo, as a listener, you know that I have really found something new in the last year or so that I've talked to guests that's helped me get insights on their approach and their process and who they are as creators. And that's learning for people who create, what do they consume, right? So what are things that you as a creative are finding are taking over your brain? Now, we talked about some games, right? We talked about how Blades took over your brain and how Agon came in there and invaded, how Undying became, just taking it over. But I want to go beyond that. I want to not even talk about research, and I want to put your design hat away. What is something recently, whether it be a book, a series, or something that has just taken over your life?
So I wouldn't say it took my life, just because I don't have the privilege, to let that happen at the moment. But basically, I fell in love with the Wheel of Time series on Amazon.
Oh, now that's a very controversial thing, because there's a lot of people that hated Wheel of Time.
I know. And unpopular opinion, I fell in love. I mean, we watched the show. We didn't know a lot about it. We were looking for something good. We were in a fantasy mood, and we were looking for anything, actually. And there is not much, to be honest, especially when it comes to TV shows. And I loved it. I loved it so much that I made the mistake of buying the first 3 books, which are huge. I don't know if I'll ever have the time to read them, but let's say it was really, I mean, it felt good to me. I liked it.
Yeah, I think, what you did is I think one of the more honest ways to approach it, which is you were not familiar. You didn't bring the burden and baggage of having read the books with you. When I watched, I liked it much better than most people. As well. I had a little bit of that baggage because I had read Wheel of Time, but it had been so long ago that there's, I had a vague I could probably tell you 7 things I remember from reading that series because I was 13, I think, when I read 14, when I read Wheel of Time for the first time. So I enjoyed the series and I found some very distinct choices and changes they made, and I appreciated those. Some of the hate that Wheel of Time got was just bigots. So that you can ignore that, but there was legitimate concerns about it, right? There was legitimate people but they were all, again, wishing that the books were translated over, which would never happen. And I got to tell you, Edoardo, as somebody who has a very big soft spot for Wheel of Time, my love of it now as an adult thinking about it has nothing to do with the craftsmanship of the writing. It has to do with the world and the lore that I loved. I've gone back to the books because I'm starting to, try to put things in front of my daughter, and it's not an easy read. They're not as good of a wordsmith and writer as I remembered. And let's be honest, Tolkien's the same way, right? Tolkien's not a great writer. He's written some great books, but he's not a great writer. And we forget, because what we remember is what we loved. We forget how tough it is.
Absolutely. I read the Lord of the Rings when I was a child. I was, I think, 8 years old or something. And I loved it. But honestly, I appreciate the movies way more.
Yeah.
But anyway, Wheel of Time was something that caught my attention for sure.
What clicked about it? So as you and your wife are watching this, why did it work for you?
So to be honest, the moment it took us was when the monsters attacked the village. I don't remember names. I won't try it, because we were like, what is this scene? I mean, okay, they're dancing. It's a staple of fantasy genre. It feels a little bit out of place. Oh my God, what is happening? So that's what happened. And we said, wow, this really caught us off guard. This is good, because usually, especially my wife, is able to, see those coming. And the fact that she was caught by surprise was a really compelling thing to see. And then the whole setting, it felt the episode where they are finally at the Citadel, and there are all those colors, all those factions, that politics. That felt like a great world, a great setting, and that's the moment I buy on the books, because I wanted to know more.
Yeah, and I think that the creators of the TV series did a good job on 2 things. One, they didn't do everything in the books, and quite frankly, nobody wants to watch that movie. If you want all that, you got to go to the books, right? But I also liked how they slowly revealed things. I think that there were some very smart choices on when to reveal things about the world, when to introduce the politics and the different factions. I don't know whether they've promised a season 2 or not. I hope it happens. And I will watch it. But I didn't hate the Lord of the Rings prequel stuff that came out. I enjoyed that too, and that's not a popular opinion either.
No, for sure. So I watched that. It was good in the moment. It felt a little less good after, I think.
Yeah.
There was, let's say that there was a bit that I still laugh about, to be honest. The moment where the Southlands text changed to Mordor. And that felt a little bit weird,
Yeah.
But it's so bigotry, because I think there were some hate also on that show because of bigotry, which is something I obviously don't don't agree on or don't agree with. I liked it in the moment. But let's say I don't know if you're familiar with the Pitch Meeting, a YouTube channel on Screen Rant.
No.
So basically, it's a producer talking with the showrunner, and it's, let's say, if you look at that, you will see 90% of my comments on the show. Let's say it's hilarious anyway.
Can you give me an example?
Well, for example, the fact that they introduced Gandalf and they try to make it a mystery, but it's Gandalf. I mean, no doubt about it. No matter the effort in the final episodes to make it look something different. Come on. I mean,
there was some ham-fisted writing in there. I could not agree more. And for me to enjoy it, I had to just stop and just relax. But you're 100% right. And this is also happening with the Star Wars stuff, where they feel they have to do things for the fans. They feel like they have to do some service to the other works. And I really wish creators could let that go and just say, let's tell a story in this same world, and we don't have to reference the other parts.
Which I think is what makes The Mandalorian the best Star Wars show so far, in my opinion.
So I love Mandalorian, but it's not the best. Andor's the best.
Yeah, you're right. But it's following the same principle.
Correct.
And while, for example, I didn't enjoy that much Obi-Wan. Yeah. I couldn't. I was trying to, but I couldn't. And anyway, I think you said something very interesting, or at least to me. I think there is a difference between entertaining and good.
Oh, 100%.
Ring of Powers was entertaining for sure. But was it good? That can be debatable, I think.
Yeah, I have that conversation a lot with my friends about movies, right? So for me, there's two different things here, which is movies that I love and enjoy and movies that are good. And those are two different things, right? And the example I often use is Indiana Jones Temple of Doom. Mm-hmm. It's not a very good movie, but God, do I love that movie, and I will watch it. You say, hey, Craig, you want to go watch? Yeah, I'll go watch it right now, right? I'll go watch it for the 50th time. I love that movie, but structurally, there's a ton of weakness in that movie. There's some really just silly choices and decisions made, and you can tell some of those were at the very beginning, some of them were made at the end. And I don't care. I just love that movie.
And honestly, I think this way of thinking also explains some of the discourse on tabletop RPGs.
I agree.
There are games that are good, but there are games that can be entertaining. And most of the time, people don't really think about a game being good design-wise. It just needs to be entertaining.
Yeah, and Shadowrun is the example I use there, right? I think I could almost empirically prove that Shadowrun is a bad game, but that does not mean that there are not thousands of tables out there that have had unbelievably incredible, great times playing Shadowrun. And those are two different things.
100%. I think Shadowrun, Exalted, and Eberron are the three greatest settings I ever stumbled on, and I never managed to really enjoy because of the game. Mm-hmm. But those are entertaining, and they can be.
So, and I don't know a whole lot about it, but it piqued my interest. Someone has put out Eberron for Savage Worlds.
Yes.
And I'll be interested to hear how that comes across and how that works, because Savage Worlds and 5e are very different systems, and Eberron was built from the ground up for D&D. So I'll be very interested to see what comes back from that idea.
To be honest, I think these three settings I mentioned are probably the most translated ones. I found Eberron for Dungeon World. I found Eberron for Fate.
Nice.
They tried to make it in every sauce, basically.
Yeah, it's because they're so beloved, right? And people, there's people that don't want the system to get in the way. So Edoardo, on a Saturday, there is a lot of things you can do that is far more interesting than talking games with me. So I really do appreciate you taking the time.
No, it's the other way around, actually. Thank you so much for having me, really. it was really pleasant to be here.
I'm glad. And guys, you can scroll down right now. You're going to find a link to Edoardo's Twitter account. He's very active on Twitter. Follow him. And that way you can keep up to speed and on top of everything. More importantly, though, you listen to the whole thing. This is the end. And I appreciate you doing that. Take care.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to Tabletop Talk and share it with your friends. Check out our content on YouTube and Twitch. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook and stay updated on everything coming from Third Floor. All the links are in the show notes. Take care, floorheads.
That was good, my friend.
Was it?
Yeah, that was
okay.
Good.
I am sweating over here, you know.
Stop. Just all we're gonna do is talk about games, man. We got this.
No, I know. I was trying to prep myself and do this, but you know, between a foreign language and you know, I as I told you the last time, it's real. It feels like a real honor, you know, because the greatest designers were on this side of the table, and I feel like I'm, let's say, not prepared for this. But anyway,
honestly, you're killing it, man. And just, you know, when we get to this next segment, just think about just answer my questions. So don't worry about, you know, I think. And I love, you know, guests that, you know, do a bunch of preparation and have their notes in front of them. But the sooner I can get you off those notes, the happier I'm going to be.
So to be honest, I didn't have any.
Great.
No. I just tried to set myself in a way that's saying we're just talking games. Perfect. Slow down, take it easy, enjoy it.
All right, so I will bring us back. Right, I think we gave him a good sense of it, Edoardo. That worked out really well. And I spelled the pressers wrong.
Sorry, I stuttered for a bit. I'm. For the title of the movie and stuff.
You're killing it.
Okay.
See, here's the thing. You got to remember that you hear the edited, produced versions of all my interviews. You would be amazed the difference between the real interview, and you're going to hear it this time, right? So you're going to hear what I do to this, and you're going to be like, oh, everybody's an idiot when they're on Craig's show. I just make them sound good. No, the editing is magic, my friend. All right. Which one makes more sense to start with, monsters or pirates?
If you want to go chronologically, I'd say monsters and oppressors.
Okay, great. All right.
I'm sorry I didn't have clear plans. I hope this is not disappointing.
But no, Edoardo, this is what's interesting. That's what you have to understand, is that you just having an answer to that is a lot less interesting than what we just talked about. What we just talked about is a whole segment of design that nobody talks about, right? No, I'm glad you didn't. It made for a better segment. No.
Okay, good.
All right, I'll bring us back. Oh, hey, are you still here? Wow. Well, the episode is over, but if you're bored, why not go to patreon.com and support the show for as little as $1 a month? Yeah, you can just scroll down and get the link. It's Patreon that makes this and all of our other content possible. Don't you want to join the other floorheads on the Patreon Discord? Anyway, thanks for sticking around. Take care. Bye.